As podcasters, we really need to know exactly who our target audience is. And once you know that, amazing things can happen. So today, I'm going to tell you what to do with your podcast once you know who the audience is and how to get your guest to tell amazing stories.
Sound matters. Be heard. Welcome to the podcast where you get exclusive behind-the-scenes tips to make your own show sound truly spectacular. This is Podtastic Audio.
Hey, what's happening? How are you doing today? Thank you so much for being here. I am Chris, and this is Podtastic Audio, the show which I have designed and created to help you, yes, you, make an amazing show for your audience. And one amazing tool to make sure that happens is Riverside.fm. Today's episode is brought to you by Riverside, the platform that helps podcasters just like you sound amazing, whether you're recording solo or with a guest halfway around the world. Riverside gives you everything you need for high quality audio and video. And you want to try it out? Check this out. You can try it out for free, but you want to kick it up a notch and get access to all the amazing features. You got to use promo code Podtastic and you'll get 15% off your plan. And check out some of these amazing features such as multi-track editing, AI-powered one-click video editor, dynamic video scenes. Plus, now they offer text-based editing and auto silence removal to speed things up. How easy peasy is that? Get ready to take your podcast to the next level. Go to riverside.fm right now and don't forget the code Podtastic. You're going to get yourself 15% off. When I first started this podcast right here, Podtastic Audio, I really only had like one goal in mind. And that goal was to help indie podcasters to basically share everything I have used and known about podcasting up to that point and just share it with anybody that needs help creating and mastering and getting good audio out of their podcast and sharing it out to the world. The Chris and Christine Show podcast started just before the 2020 surge of podcasts. So we had a little bit of a head start, but I've always focused on figuring out ways to make sure the audio and like the listener experience to that audio was its absolute best, the best I could make it. And because it sounded like more professional than your average indie podcaster at the time, those basic like Zoom chat calls with god-awful audio with horrible recording situations using the webcam microphones on their laptop, trying to avoid that situation and actually use real microphones, not the best, just real microphones, nothing super expensive, just simple equipment, and making sure it sounds good because I listened back to everything I did. I record audio, I listen to audio, and I edit the audio, and I made sure that everything sounded amazing. And because it sounded amazing, other podcasters at the time, we're talking 2020 here, were asking me for advice on how to make sure that their shows also sounded just as good. And that's how Podtastic Audio started in the first place. This entire show has been designed to help out other indie podcasters. That is the only goal of this show. Now, I know some of you, especially those in the service provider space, this might come as a big shock because a lot of the other podcasts about podcasting, I would say maybe 90% of them, maybe even more, are using the podcast as the top of the funnel to funnel you down the chain to a sales call, to funnel you down the chain to get you to buy their course, their service. Usually it's a coaching plan or a service plan or things like that, which is fine. If you do that with your show, that is absolutely fine. That has not been the goal of this show. I didn't start this podcast as a cash cow. I didn't start this podcast to become my new job. I've only started this show just because I want to help and I want to share the knowledge and the things that I have done and share them with you. And yes, I do have a few things for sale on my website, but this show is not designed to sell you any of those things. Basically, what I'm saying is that Podtastic Audio is not a sales funnel show like a lot of the other ones are. And that is okay. It's your show. You can do whatever you want to do with your show. I do have a services page on my website, but I don't push my services onto you, the listener. I just don't. They're there if you need them. They're there if you want to. The services include one-on-one coaching time, and the rest is a bunch of podcast editing services that I provide and I do, and that's what I like to do. Now, if any of those things interest you, you always can go to my website, which is podtasticaudio.com, and everything is right there under services. But if you are stuck on the podcast creation side of your show, trying to figure out what to talk about, how to structure your show, how to plan out your show, well, I've got you covered because today I just built 2 amazing AI-generated tools to help you as the podcaster make an amazing show for your audience. To be able to access both of these tools, you will need either the free plan or the paid plan of ChatGPT. Don't worry, links down in the show notes of this very episode. But starting with the very first tool I created, it is called Show Planner by Podtastic Audio. Now you're thinking, Chris, what does this thing even do? Show Planner. Well, it's pretty self-explanatory. It helps podcasters create detailed, personalized episodes outlining based on tone and style of your show. Now, I have it pulled up right now, and as a live demo on this podcast right here, I am going to show you exactly how this thing works. So I have it pulled up right now. And the first thing you're going to want to ask your show planner is you want to ask, like, I need to make an episode. We'll type that in. I need to create an episode. Enter. Now, as it's thinking, the very first thing it's going to ask you is, it'll say, hey, I would love to make an episode. So it wants to know exactly who is your target audience of your show. Now, this is a very, very important question, and I made sure that this question was programmed into this chat. And it is a key fundamental of whether or not your show is for kids or adults or for anybody in between. So it wants to know exactly who your show is for. So let's make something up here. Let's say our show is for busy moms. Okay, it just wrote back. It says, great. Creating content for busy moms can be powerful since they often look like content that's practical and relatable. Now, what's the main goal or outcome that you would like to get from this episode? It even gives you an example. So it says, are you looking to give tips? Are you looking to be inspired, inspire others, provide entertainment? So let's just say provide entertainment. And it's thinking, and here it comes back with awesome entertainment for busy moms. Now, it gives you some choices. Now that we've got you that nailed down, what type of entertainment you're looking for? It gives you some examples. It says funny stories, interview with guests, fun discussions, games or quizzes. So let's just say games and quizzes. Let's say games and quizzes. And let's see what it says. Okay, it says that's a great choice. It says games and quizzes can be a fun way to engage busy moms. And it gives you a structured idea with introduction. It says game 1, mom truths or myths. Then it gives you another quiz. It says, how mom savvy are you? And gives you examples of that. It's a little quiz that you put out there. Then also gives you another game, Would You Rather, Mom Edition. It sounds like a fun thing. Like, gives you an example here. Would you rather have an uninterrupted nap or a hot meal? Things like that. And there's also a call to action at the end. But it says here at the very bottom, it'll tell you, is this okay? You want anything else? You want anything you want to add? Looks good. Okay. Now it says, glad you like it. Now let's fine tune the details to fit your show. It's going to ask you a few questions at this spot. It's going to say, hey, what kind of tone do you want it? What kind of length do you want it? Is this a guest show or a solo show? And do you have any calls to action at the very end? So once we clarify these, we can refine any games or questions to ensure the episode flows perfectly. And most important of all is that this show is structured and tuned for your ideal target audience. Without your target audience, none of this happens. So I'm going to tell it that it's a solo show. And then it's going to ask another few things here. It says, perfect. A solo show gives you lots of flexibility. Now, it actually has the outline for a solo show right here and everything broken down step by step, segment by segment, quiz by quiz, because we chose quiz at the beginning, and it structures your entire episode. Now, some of the stuff in here might be fun and lighthearted, but if you're doing more like data and analysis and more like up to the minute information, some of the information based on ChatGPT may not be as relevant as you may need it. But what this does do is that it gives you the outline and the frame to structure your show tailored to your podcast, tailored to your specific audience, the most important part of all. So once you look over everything, it's going to say next steps. Do you need help writing more specific questions of the would you rather game you're creating? Or do you have a specific call to action you like to promote, or maybe a website or social media you like to promote? And you say, let's say, okay, sounds good. And it says, awesome, thank you. And here is the final episode outline. It breaks it down with introduction, that first game, that first quiz, that other game, the outro and call to action. And it even gives you an example of what your call to action could be. It says, thanks for playing along, moms. I'd love to hear your quiz answers of your own. Would you rather ideas? Send me on social media, whatever it is, or your email, whatever it is. And don't forget to tune in next week for another fun episode. It pretty much creates the entire thing based on who your target audience is. And that is the most important thing. I can't stress that enough. Now, Show Planner by Podtastic Audio, I have designed this thing to work for pretty much any style of podcast out there. Whether you're doing a solo episode or a interview style episode, or even like a roundtable or co-hosted, any style of format possible, it will adjust for each one. And at every single stage, it'll ask you, what kind of show is this? Who is it for? And then it'll continue from there. And every answer you give it based on the parameters which I put in place, it will craft an amazing episode outline for your podcast. Now, I'm sure there are other chatbots out there, and if you want to maybe plug in something in a ChatGPT all by yourself, go right ahead. But what I've created was based on a podcaster knowing specifically who their target audience is, and it will craft an episode based around those parameters to best deliver your content in the absolute best way possible that will serve your audience best and make it fun along the way. So for you podcasters out there that do exclusive interview only shows, and I know there's a lot of them out there, and to set the record straight, you do not have to do an interview style show if you have a podcast. You can do a solo show. I'm doing a solo show right now, and I know solo shows are difficult for a lot of people to do. That's why like interview style shows are so popular. And I get it. I totally get it. You get on, you chat, you ask a few questions, you do the basic things, and you wrap it all up and you make a nice little podcast episode out of it. But have you ever had a guest on your show that you're kind of like, man, they did not give me very good answers to my questions. They kind of dodged a lot of them. They weren't very specific. They were like yes and no answers to the questions. Like, did you grow up here? Yes. Oh, did you have a fun time on that trip? Yes. Oh, what was it like getting divorced from your ex-wife? Was she mean to you? Yeah, pretty much. Things like that. One thing you really want to do when you're interviewing a guest is to make sure that guest tells really good stories. In fact, the reason why you invited them on in the first place is hopefully, they've got some really good stories to tell. But how would you know that? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Maybe you did a lot of research on the guest. And even if you did do tons and tons of research on the guest, how do you come up with amazing questions that are going to get the guest to tell amazing stories? And even better, amazing stories that drive some kind of emotion. You want the guest to tell amazing stories because with storytelling, especially on an audio podcast, it really helps the listener out. It keeps them tuned and engaged. If you start your podcast and your guest is telling an amazing story and they're going in like thing after thing and you're asking them really good questions that drive that story, the listener is going to be like, ooh, what's going to happen next? It's just like when you watch a really good movie or TV show. If you're watching these things, you're like, yeah, I want to know what happens to the next scene. I want to know what happens to this person. I want to know what happens next. And how do you do that? You get your guest to tell amazing stories. But how do you even get them to do that? Well, introducing Interview Storyteller by Podtastic Audio. This GPT tool, which I've personally created, I made it so that you get the questions for this particular guest that are designed to ask them to tell amazing stories. So I have it pulled up right now. And the first thing I'm going to say is I have an interview with my guest who is a small business owner. And based on that, it tells me a few samples of questions that are designed to get them to tell stories. The first question it says is, can you take us back to a moment when you first decided to start your business? What was the biggest motivator? Another example, it will say something like, was there a moment when you realized your business was going to succeed? What was that experience like? This actually encourages reflection on the turning point in their journey and often brings up stories of pride, relief, or maybe even surprise. Another question it says here is, looking back, what advice would you give yourself when you're just starting out? Well, that's a pretty obvious one. This question encourages reflection on their growth and the valuable lessons learned along the way, which should be the main reason you brought that guest on the show in the first place, is that your audience can take away valuable tips and inspiration and lessons learned. Like, let them tell their story of the things they made mistakes in and the problems that they did and how they fixed them, so that you, as the listener listening to that show, can experience things like, oh yeah, I did that too. Oh yeah, how did he handle that situation? Oh, that's how he handled that situation. But it gets better because not only can you type in like a general thing like business owner on here, you can go super specific, like say you have the actual name of somebody. So just for fun here, I'm going to type in the name of a celebrity and I'm going to see what it says. So let's just say I'm interviewing Brad Pitt. Okay, so it says, if you're preparing for an interview with Brad Pitt or discussing him on your podcast, there are certain things you want to ask them. Basically, it says, like, they're broken down into 5 different segments. Segment 1, career journey. 2, challenges. 3, humanitarian work. And 4, behind the scenes stuff. And 5, future aspiration. So let's say, for example, the very first thing it asks under the career journey, it says, looking back at your incredible career, was there a specific role or moment that felt like a turning point for you as an actor? Now, this drives the story. The next thing here, you've played a wide range of characters, but has there ever been a role that deeply challenged or changed you in unexpected ways? See, another one that tells a great story. And here's one here. It says, is there a memorable moment behind the scenes on a set or in your personal life that shaped your perspective on fame or success? See, all designed to tell an amazing story. And the only reason at all I even created these things in the first place was to help you out. That is it. Just like I mentioned at the very beginning of this podcast episode, this show was designed to help you out. It is not being used as a sales funnel to get you to buy my thing or buy these things from me. And yes, these tools are 100% absolutely free. Yeah, free, as in you don't pay anything to use these things. They are my gift from me to you because I wanted to make sure that you had all the tools in your toolbox to make sure you can, one, make an amazing outline for your podcast, no matter what kind of show you do, no matter who it's for, that you have the necessary tools to create an amazing episode for your audience. And if you have trouble finding really good questions to ask any guest you have, no matter who they are, to tell amazing stories, to drive amazing conversations. And that is what it's all about. Hey, I want to say thank you so much for listening all the way to the very end of this episode. Please check out these tools. Links to them will be down in the show notes below. They're entirely free to use. And until next time, happy podcasting.